Well, on to our top story then. Police used stun grenades and rubber bullets in an attempt to disperse protesters after violence flared up at various locations in Cape Town. 13 Western Cape Total Shutdown protesters were arrested for public violence and causing disruptions to traffic following run-ins with police on Jakes Gerwel Drive. The protesters say their so-called Western Cape Total Shutdown is to highlight a number of social ills, from poverty to drugs and gangsterism. We're joined now by our SABC reporter Mariska Botha, who is covering the story for us in Cape Town. Mariska, good evening to you. The protesters say, of course, they've consistently had their pleas falling on deaf ears and not enough is being done to protect vulnerable communities.
You hit the nail on the head there. That's exactly what people are saying. They say they feel like forgotten communities. This morning, people were protesting all over the major communities on the Cape Flats, including Bonteheuwel, where you saw those stun grenades being fired to disperse the crowd because people tried to prevent the roads from being used. And the issues that people were highlighting to us was gangsterism, is poverty, and in areas like Manenberg, people say there's major overcrowding. So in each area, there are different issues that people see as a challenge, and that is preventing them from going forward and living decent lives. But the overarching problem that everybody faces, that they were telling us, is how dangerous some of these areas have become. Some of them saying gangsters are terrorizing entire communities, and it's not safe for anyone to walk in the streets at any time of day because you simply don't know what will happen. So they said the best way to do this is as a community movement to come forward, to do something like this, to cause a shutdown so that people can pay attention to those issues that they face on a daily basis, which they say that nobody is really paying attention to, or at least it feels to them as if nothing is done to improve the situation in these areas.
Mariska, there was also a sense from the community, as I understood it, that authorities were quite quick to respond. A number of them saying that, in fact, the efforts to try and quell the protest today was an infringement on their right to protest. One of the issues they highlighted is that it does seem as if authorities there are more concerned with the problems of the rich.
That is certainly something we heard as well. This afternoon, there was a feedback meeting held by representatives from each of these communities. And they, of course, were saying, why should they ask for permits if their right to protest is enshrined in the Constitution? And they're saying the only way to get people's attention is through these protests. One person went as far as saying the police were quick on the scene to react to the so-called violence that was in the area and the prevention of free-flowing, of cars free-flowing. But when there's problems in the areas around gangsterism or when there's shooting in the area, you don't really see police around. Of course, the police also has a mandate to ensure that things run smoothly, and the protest was without a permit. So, of course, there are certain issues that has to be looked at when you talk about the right to protest versus what it says in the law. But certainly this community feels that they are forgotten. And one of the big issues is, of course, policing, saying that there aren't nearly enough police members on the ground to help and assist them to keep their community safe. And they are certainly saying that they feel that the manpower goes toward the rich areas, and those areas where there's poverty and crime on a consistent basis is just forgotten.
Mariska, the response from the city and province, no doubt, is to echo that sense of a lack of boots on the ground, but they're blaming national government for not providing enough support for that, aren't they?
Yes, certainly. We've heard that from various leaders on all tiers of government, saying that policing is a national competency, and certainly that police numbers stem from what the national department decides what happens with the police. We've seen in the latest crime statistics that just came out in recent weeks that Nyanga tops that list with the highest crime or murder rate in the country, and people ascribe that to the number of police on the ground, saying that for the number of police officers that are there, they simply cannot handle the amount of work that is that is needed to be done on the ground. And yes, authorities in the Western Cape has been calling for a while for the number of police officers to increase on the ground.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Mariska Botha, reporter on the line there from Cape Town. Of course, it's all very well to blame national government, but from what we heard on the ground, many of the social ills that underpin today's protests have to do with inequality, unemployment, crime, as you've heard, and many of the residents there saying that there's been a failure to respond to complaints over a long time. We'll keep you updated on that story as it unfolds and develops further.